For the next part, let us welcome Mr. Randy Durband, the CEO of the GSTC, to speak about GSTC's global mission and current activities. Randy.
Do you have a clean one for me? Okay, good morning. Nice to have you here. Nice to be with you in beautiful Seville in the rain. My job here for the next bit is to talk to you about GSTC's mission and activities and updates on what we're doing. So in this room we have a mix of people who know us very well, people who know us a bit, and people who are quite new to GSTC. So I'm going to try to present something that's of relevance to all of you by talking about who we are, our core mission, what we do, and for those of you who are regulars and know us well, some updates that I think you'll find interesting. So great to be here. I was last here in 2019 when Phoebus and Sevilla hosted WTTC Global Summit, and it was just a phenomenal show when we learned how well they can do that. So very nice to be back here. So let me get into it. And first of all, thank our organizers for this wonderful event. Sevilla City, of course, Andalucia, who you just heard from, and ourselves co-organized. We spent really the entire calendar year. We were already talking in January about core themes that we agreed that we wanted to cover here. So we worked very closely together. And Melia Hotels, thank you very much for your support. And other sponsors and supporters, thank you Ecoterre for providing carbon offset for the event, and for Casal for providing local transport. And I want to thank Etifor, an Italian NGO, who just became a general GSTC sponsor, not for the event, but a very interesting NGO that is doing good things and engaging with us in northern Italy. So these are sponsors to thank. I want to acknowledge also our board of directors. We have a very wonderful board that's very diverse, and their support is essential to our success. Thank you very much. And on the slide, the photos here are those of you who are present. So I'm going to ask, if your photo is on the screen right now, please stand up and look around. So these are the board of directors who are present in the room. There's two of you right there. If you kindly stand up, Giannis, look around. Thank our support. And you'll see diversity, which we'll talk about. And then here's the rest of our board. And we have quarterly meetings, and on Thursday we'll have a quarterly meeting. It'll be a hybrid of these fine folks you just saw, and these who will be calling in from around the world. So we're very proud of a very supportive board that's extremely diverse. They're diverse in many ways. For many years, we've had at least 50% women on our board. We have very good ethnic representation, cultural, and look at geographic. This is quite exceptional. I think this paints a picture that we are truly a global organization. The Global and Global Sustainable Tourism Council, we take very seriously, and very proud of that. And that's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes we say it's a small world, but it's a big world, and it's full of complexity. And I think when you can't fly, it's even bigger. So that's our current board of directors as to where they are. So again, and that's pretty typical. We have elected seats and we have a few appointed seats. And even in the election, our members show always, at every election, they show a great passion for diversity. And so that's been a constant through our history. We're going to use Slido on your smartphone during the course of the conference. And I invite you to start getting used to it right now. If you want to go on your smartphone, you have official permission to use your smartphone right now. Otherwise, try to limit the Facebook and TikTok. Don't use Twitter. No, I'm kidding. I used to think Elon Musk was a hero with his electric vehicles, but anyway, Slido, many of you are used to it. Here's the login code. And just to kind of get us warmed up, if you go there, please, I think you've found it by now, slido.com, and then enter hashtag or hash GSTC2022. And just to get warmed up, please answer this question, just to kind of review the diversity of you sitting in the room. What best describes you, your personal, professional situation right now? Ooh, good. Strong on destination management. We love consultants. We love academics. We had an academic symposium yesterday, the first that we've been wanting to do for a long time. We think there's tremendous opportunity to engage academia more with industry and public sectors, so we're very happy about that. We've always had a lot of academics involved, but we're going to try to get a little bit more formal about it. Destination management is the clear winner so far. Why do I not see it? Okay. Okay, we don't see the full list, we see the biggest numbers. You know, it's interesting about destination management being on top. So we work with industry, we work with academia, we work with NGOs, but during the course of COVID, a remarkable thing happened to GSTC. We grew tremendously. During the quiet of the pandemic, many public sector organizations at the national level, municipal, provincial, et cetera, came to us and said, we're using the quiet to do more planning and development. And we know we've wanted to move more into sustainability in the past. And so this is really one of the good things that came out of COVID, is that they used the quiet for planning and development. I think we entered COVID with only 8 or 9 national members, and today we have 28 national members, and many, many provincial, state, and municipal members. That's very exciting. So they're well represented here today. So thank you for that. Now, during the course of the conference, then, we ask you to use Slido at events, because when we have breakouts and you'll enter your questions for the moderators, it's a tremendous help to the moderator if you vote for the questions somebody else has written, rather than write a similar comment. If you've ever been a moderator, it's a little bit hard to read that all quickly. So if you could kindly do a thumbs up or whatever it says, a vote for support of a particular question, and then the moderator can see sort of the winning votes. That very much helps at the Q&A for the breakout, so kindly use it then. And so we so strongly encourage you to use Slido that we've got a giveaway. And so the person who's most active on Slido can come to our conference next year and get 3-night accommodation and the registration free of charge. The person who's most active on Slido during the event. How's that for a carrot? Thank you for using Slido. And if you continue using Slido after the event on social media, you too can win 3 nights and a free registration next time we gather in 2023. The train thing worked very well, Roy. Good job. And thank you all for, we heard some amazing stories of Europeans doing unusual routing to come here by rail. So well done on that, big effort. So thank you for that. So Slido's the thing, social media, please include us in your social media. Let's come back to our diversity geographically. Sorry, I'm going to need water earlier than usual. So this is the 350 delegates that are in the room. And as Luigi Cabrini mentioned, 61 countries, quite remarkable. This is our largest participation of international participants since we started doing big public conferences in 2016. Prior to that, we just had smaller members meetings, so we've been doing these events for 2016. But you can see the tremendous spread geographically of the people in the room. Let's think about geographic diversity, and let's think about global impacts. Now, we could go into deep analysis and data on carbon emissions by country, by region. I'm not going to do that. I'll let you just sort of reflect upon those things. But look at the global population. 60% of us are Asians. Somehow the sustainable tourism community has been largely in the Western world, talking to each other. But you know what? Carbon emissions and methane, they kind of go up into the atmosphere and the jet stream swirls them around, and we're all united. We got to fix our problems together. We have global problems. And so we have to think far more globally, act far more globally, have interactions. one of the reasons GSTC has really kind of grown recently is that the governments who have stepped in to join us and engage, big brands that are global, something that very much resonates with them is that in the global economy and the global challenges of climate crisis and plastics and many other challenges that we face, they're global issues and we want a global standard. So the GSTC criteria is a global standard that's relevant from Brussels to Beijing, north, south, east, west. And so this is a big factor, a global standard for global problems. So the GSTC criteria very much that, and we'll talk about that. So our board has this diversity, and I want to just call out a couple of people from Asia on our board of directors, and they happen to be very close at hand. Coco Tang, could you stand up again, please? So Coco is from Shanghai. She got out, thank you, good job. And Coco got to Shanghai just in time for a lockdown for a few months because she's from the south part of China, Yunnan province. And she had just gone there to create a social enterprise that she had legally registered that will exist in large part to act as our agent in China to help us with Chinese language training and many other activities. Next to her, Ram, please, India on our board of directors. And Ram leads an India working group for us that's very active and doing great things and has been doing it for many years. So, the two largest countries in the world, 1.4 billion people. We've got presence. They're not doing anything alone. These are facilitators of change. And so thank you both. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that, if we want a sustainable world, we've got to get at the whole world. We've got to get at Africa and Asia and the whole world and look at it that way. And that's certainly key perspective of our whole approach. So, another way of looking at who we are is just to look at this sample of our membership. And this is just a sample of our membership. So I've talked a lot about already the public sector. So we got Japan Tourism Agency, that's the English translation there for basically the ministry. Indonesia, Visit Sweden is here with us. Many members at the national level. Again, I said 28 national organizations. So in the public sector. And then in the United States, there's no central thing, so it's by states. We have Arizona, Utah, and various municipalities. So it's varied around the world as to whether it's more municipal or destination-driven or public policy. But we're working with a great number of people throughout the world. On the industry side, we've got some of the largest hotel chains. Accor just joined us quite recently. Radisson just joined us. Hilton and IHG have been with us for a long time. And when you think about some of the tour operators and providers of travel, TUI has been with us really from our inception. Jet2 Holidays, EasyJet Holidays is joining us here. So major travel companies, we're very happy. One of our board members, Kuniko-san from Japan, JTB Corporation, is the giant travel company of Japan, joined us a year ago on their 110th anniversary. 110 years as a travel company, JTB Corporation. So that's, I think, maybe before Thomas Cook and anything in the United States. So we're happy to have you. And so it's, again, rather global, growing. And then OTAs, this is interesting. We've done a tremendous amount of work with OTAs. So upper left, we show Booking.com. We've been working with them for several years. And you may know that they now have a badge on the search results for hotels. And they're not fully disclosing, even with us, that we've been helping them work on this for years of testing different concepts. But the highest score a hotel can get to get that badge is to be certified by a certification body that GSTC has accredited. And the second highest score if they get certified by someone that uses a GSTC recognized standard. And we'll talk about what those things mean. And they tested that. They thought in their minds very quickly, to me it was very slow, testing something in this market, analyzing the results. But now they've gone global with it. But we've got many other OTAs. I think out of probably the top 10 OTAs in the world. I think about 8 of them or something like that are GSTC members. Trip.com, Agoda on the screen. And something that was a real driver there is we've been partnering and working recently a great deal with Travelist. You may have heard of Travelist. Few people in our community really, I think, understand what it is. Travelist was started by Prince Harry using his celebrity power to affect change by talking. He had originally 5 signatory organizations. It was Skyscanner, Booking.com, TripAdvisor, Trip.com, and Visa credit cards. And then others have joined. And if they join and sign, they make a strong commitment to work non-competitively on developing methodologies for getting information on sustainable product and services to the consumers. So this is a very powerful thing to have those big brands doing that. So again, in my mind, they're moving slowly, but they're moving. And nothing's perfect, but it's going in the right direction, and there's a sincere effort. So then Travelist has been growing. I just gave you the original 5 signatories. But early this year, Google signed on. And as soon as Google Travel signed on, they had pledged on the hotel side to follow the methodology of Booking.com. So Google Travel joined GSTC and called Roy and me and started talking about the strategies we've been working with at Booking.com. So Travelist there's something there, folks. It's real, it's tangible, it's moving slower than some of us would like, but it's moving and it's great. And we're very happy about that. And I've actually now been interacting directly with their accommodations working group. So we're really, I think, affecting change there. So some very exciting things. And then other OTAs outside of Travelist, but Traveloka, the giant of Indonesia, Make My Trip, the giant of India, are all joining us in testing and approaches like this. So we're a little entity that I think is, Luigi Cabrini said, I think we have significant impacts. And so it's through the company we keep. And so again, this is just a sample of members, but you can see tremendous variety. Our heart is about supporting also SMEs, but we believe that if we really want to affect change, we've got to build systems based on scale and based on the big players to really get systems moving, and then that can benefit SMEs as well. Before I came to GSTC, I've been in travel and tourism, by the way, for 40 years. Patrick, nice to be with you again. We served on the board of directors of the European Tour Operators Association long ago. And most of my career was as an outbound tour operator. But then as I left the private sector before GSTC, I was doing development work on tourism development projects in developing countries and really learned the needs of all that. And, and so I've looked at SMEs and how we can really support them. And so the intention is there, but again, we just really believe that if we're going to provide services and mechanisms and methodologies that support the SMEs, we have to get scale. And we have to get systems in place. And so we've got to drive the big guys for quantity of impact early, but then that's going to drive the systems that will support all sorts of businesses. So who are we? We are a nonprofit organization, independently registered as a nonprofit organization, but we really are inspired by the UN system and created by 2 UN agencies, UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program, and UNWTO. Mr. Luigi Cabrini was the head of sustainability at UNWTO at the time, and so he was one of our founders and our chair today. And those 2 UN agencies got together to define sustainability. And then as part of that work, they wanted a longer definition, so they wanted standards created. So they created us. So we're not in the UN, we're completely outside the UN, but we're started by them, inspired by them. And they asked us to do 2 things at the start. Create global standards, and then develop programs to apply those standards in a meaningful and impactful way. So that's our mission. Now, I have on the lower right reference to the ISEAL community membership that we gained just under 2 years ago, and I'll be talking about what that is. But to start to introduce that organization to you, they have a standard setting code for any entity working in any sector on sustainability. And they have guidance on how you create standards. So from the start of GSTC, we were following that standard setting code. And we put out a massive call when we create the criteria and when we revise them. Literally thousands of calls go out. We have a massive email list that Roy and the team manage and that we send out to the world. And then we have focus groups and we have all sorts of interventions to create a truly global standard. So we're the managers of a process. So the GSTC criteria belong to each person in this room every bit as much as it belongs to me. Because this is not our standard, we're the managers of a process to collect all the input from you and condense that into what we agree across all these lines of geography and economic and social development as to what are the key things to work on. So the dates that you see there are the original date that the criteria is released, and then they went through a formal revision in the same way with this massive inclusion and big process. It took more than a year to create each of the criteria we have. The GSTC industry criteria and the GSTC destination criteria came later. And when we revise them, we do that in no less than about 10 months. So we go through a couple of phases of public consultation. That inclusive process and that slow and methodical process gives them the credibility that these are truly global, these are truly inclusive, and I hope you can appreciate there's nothing like that in tourism. Most of the standards that we have in tourism are created by a small committee or one or two people, and nothing comes close to that. This is why governments are picking up on us, and big brands with teams of lawyers looking at risk like the credibility of a credible, transparent, inclusive system. So that's the essence of who we are. And I would ask you to think about GSTC as an organization, first and foremost, as the keepers of the criteria. We get known and associated, I think, too much with certification. Certification is one strategy for how to apply the criteria, but they are relevant in so many other ways that I'll be talking about. So originally, it was just for tour operators and hotels, and then when we revised them, the third version, the second revision in 2016, we renamed them because we think that the criteria, the standard itself, is relevant for any kind of tourism business. And then we have performance indicators that are specific for hotels and tour operators, okay? But they're relevant to any business, we think. Then we created the destination criteria, which serve two levels. They're a guide for good management at a localized destination, and they're a good guide for public policy matters. Both of them are based on these four pillars, and this is so essential to our work. In 2005, UNEP and UNWTO, when they were working together, they created what we consider still the best single-sentence definition of sustainable tourism. It's one sentence, and it talks about community, and it talks about economic sustainability of the businesses, and it talks about community. And that one sentence became the driver, the foundation, that we said, whatever the public says, we know we have to work on social issues, cultural issues, environmental issues, and on governance. So both are based this way. Section A on management and governance issues, B on community issues, C on more community but culture, and D on the environment. So, you know, there's more of D than others, but yet the social and the community and the cultural in B and C are extremely important as well. Look at the language of B, C, and D. In all three cases, we say maximize the positive impacts and minimize the negative impacts. Maximize the benefits, minimize the negative impacts. I think that's very important to conceptualize what we're trying to do in sustainable tourism. Do more good and do less harm, right? We know tourism has a tremendous power to do good for job creation, economic development, cultural exchange, wonderful things. But we also know, of course, there's many damaging things environmentally, but also socially. You know, a few people in Barcelona don't like that so many tourists come to a certain neighborhood of their city. So we've seen social disruption and we see environmental problems, and so we need to manage all of that better than we have in the past. So this is the absolute foundation. We really don't engage with an organization that says, no, we just want to do the environment. And we say, no, it's all. It's the four pillars. The social issues are essential. It all is essential. This is how we define sustainable tourism, broadly and in a holistic way. So let me say a little bit more about this organization, ISEAL Alliance, because you may not be familiar with it, but it's extremely important to who we are and to what we're trying to do. Our friend Jim Sano from WWF is in the audience. WWF, I'm sure you know WWF, it's the most known conservation organization in the world, and they have their DNA imprinted all over this organization, the ISEAL Alliance. Lower left, Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, was a forerunner in this space. In 1993, they were created to put eco labels on the sustainable production of wood and paper. And until about 2000, nobody heard of them. They were busy building the technical foundation, and then eventually Kimberly-Clark, the massive multinational producer and distributor of paper, got on board, and then their competitors got on board, and now they're famous, and you see FSC label on paper and wood products all over the world constantly. And if you haven't noticed, start looking at the napkins and the business cards and paper of all sorts, and you'll see FSC logo. They were kind of the forerunner, and then in 2002, ISEAL Alliance formed to help them and others in other sectors do knowledge sharing and on development and improvement of their systems in all sectors. So it's a lot of agricultural products and manufactured products. We're the only player in travel and tourism that's a community member of ISEAL. And most of you probably never heard of it. But the importance of this is that we're learning important lessons from other sectors. And even though you might think, what does a hotel have to do with a coffee bean? Well, processes of verification are actually quite similar. And this is what's resonating also with governments. It's a very interesting thing that governments and tourism in general around the world have not really paid attention to their national standards boards and to international norms on use of standards and certification and so forth that are ISO-based and ISEAL Alliance-based. And so we've applied that in a way that nobody has. So we have a very unique identity. And so that's a big piece of who we are. It took us years to comply. So as much as we believe that a hotel or a tour operator should have somebody come from the outside at some point to verify how sustainable they are, we also believe that the certification body should have somebody come from the outside to look at how rigorous are they certifying. And we practice what we preach by having, for years, spent the effort to comply with the codes of good practice of the ISEAL Alliance. So there's this whole hierarchy that's just absolutely unique in hospitality and travel and tourism that we're doing. We even had it from the inception in our bylaws. Our founders said it from the start. We want to do what's been successfully done in other sectors. So this is circled, is from our original bylaws. And as we amended them, we never changed it. Our bylaws today still say we're going to do our best to follow the codes of the ISEAL Alliance. So they've got 3 codes. Well, they have 4 codes, actually. They have a general code of good practice, but they have 3 very specific code. And we always did well on the standard setting code, because right from the start, we had that very inclusive process I've described of really putting out a massive call to the world for input. We did that well from the start. And then it took years of development to really refine following their assurance code and their impacts code. So this is a big piece of our identity because we were building this quietly, and many of you didn't hear of us from 2007 until many years later, because we were building, looking to expertise on these things to build this foundation. Now it's mature and it's taking off because, again, when a government looks at it, or a big business with a team of lawyers analyzing risk, they like it because it's credible, rigorous, transparent. So let's talk a little bit more about all of those codes here in a moment, but let's step back and look at the big picture of travel and tourism. Is travel and tourism one sector? Or is it a group of sectors? It's a system, yeah. Well, on my chart here, we're going to call them subsectors, but just think about it. If you look at the left side column, I think most of you know this, but it's always good to remind ourselves just how complex is the interplay of the ecosystem of travel and tourism, all these different players. And I told you I've served on travel associations on 3 continents over my career, and I never saw a trade association anywhere in the world that had all of them together. That doesn't exist. WTTC sort of does, but it's really just the CEOs. There's no operationalizing of methodologies. There's no trade association nationally or internationally putting them all together. How often does aviation, standing here, come over here and talk to hotels or to rental cars? How much do people in this room talk to rental cars? We're a disparate group. It's really detached. That's a problem. So, looking at a pure sustainability standpoint, who's really doing something with global standards in these different subsectors? Well, we took the lead on hotels and accommodations. We've taken the lead on tour operators. We've taken the lead on destination management and public policy. Aviation doesn't really have standards. IATA and ICAO give guidelines, and cruise, IMO does. Did you know that shipping and aviation are excluded from the Paris Climate Accord? Because they supposedly are following these guidelines of these quasi-UN agencies. Are they? Well, I encourage you to research that and find out your opinion. MICE has many standards, but nothing global. Attractions has no global standards. Restaurants don't, but yet there's a lot of pieces to different, that's a complex thing. We're often asked, what do you think about B Corp? And our answer consistently is we have tremendous respect for B Corp, and our view is that use it as a default. If a tourism business isn't covered by something that's got a system built for it, then B Corp is very good. So where we're going with GSTC, after years of, our board considers this all the time. We've had endless discussions over the years of where we would go next after the expertise we've developed for hotels, tour operators, and destinations. And there's a real clamoring in the business community, in the MICE community, for global MICE standards. So there's some very good ones, but there's nothing global. And so just like when we came into existence to organize the fact that at the time of GSTC's birth, our founders counted 150 eco-labels for hotels, that didn't mean we weren't needed. We were needed to kind of organize that and create a global standard, right? So we're going to do that in the coming year or so for MICE and for attractions, because we think these are 2 areas that have just tremendous amount of activity and therefore tremendous amount of impacts, tremendous amount of need, and because we feel now, going into our 16th year, we feel confident of our own maturity that having gone through all this process of revising the industry criteria and the destination criteria in a way that we feel good about deep down, and ICEAL Alliance looks at and says, yep, good job, that we have the strength, the maturity, and the knowledge and the expertise to move on and fill the void on a couple of these that are missing. So over the course of the next year, and we have workshops here, for those of you who are experts in those 2 fields of MICE or attractions, you can be part of our first public consultation. That'll be the first of a long series, and there will be written surveys, online surveys, all sorts of opportunities for input, personally and professionally, to give your input on what's already out there, what do you like, what needs to be done, what's included. We're going to look at it from a variety of ways. So whatever we do at this event is just the beginning of a long and in-depth process of outreach to get that input. And it'll go slowly because they'll have credibility, because we'll have gone slowly and methodically and asked many, many people for their input and huge amount of time to synthesize that. And so at the end of the day, we'll have something that we think is usable at the global level. So that's a big piece of where we're going next. And we're often asked, well, how does this tie into the Sustainable Development Goals? And the answer is very neatly. You can, when you download the GSTC criteria free of charge, We're very mission-based. We give our intellectual property away for free. The non-commercial use of the GSTC criteria is available free of charge. And in both sets of criteria, we map the criteria to the SDGs. And we map it both ways. You can look at the list of the 17 SDGs and see which criteria are relevant for each of the 17. And you can look at the GSTC criteria and see which SDGs match that criterion. So it's a very easy reference and very relevant and matches up really quite well. So that's about standard setting. So again, I would like you to think first and foremost of us as the keepers of the global standard. Then what can we do with them? Okay, we're doing a lot with certification, but that's not all. So I want to talk about some of those things. So first of all, what is this business about assurance? What do we mean by assurance? Well, here's what we're doing that we call assurance program at GSTC, and we have 2 programs. And for those of you professionals who have been working with this, there's been a lot of misconceptions, and I really want to really make sure that we're really clear on the words we've used. Actually, let me start with number 2 in our program, GSTC recognized standards and systems. When we first started and were focused purely on creating the industry criteria, and remember I said there are 150 eco-labels already in the world for hotels, our founders said to try to influence them to change, many of them were environmental only, and to encourage them to change, to include social and the broad definition of sustainability, and to facilitate change, we'll create a program where they can formally study the GSTC industry criteria and bring the elements of it into their standard. And then if they revise their standard, we can put a mark on them to say, yeah, your standard adheres to the global standard that we've created in an inclusive way. We now have more than 50 standards around the world that have gone through that process. They do it voluntarily. We have no enforcement power in anything, right? We have tools and systems that people voluntarily come to us to apply. So about 50 standards over the course of these 14 years after the GSTC criteria were launched that have gotten that mark. So we're very proud of the impacts that this has had to broaden the definition of sustainability. That's the big thing. We're proud of that, but at the same time, we're very concerned. This program has created a great deal of confusion. We rarely see it described correctly. We constantly see this company is GSTC recognized, or this program is GSTC recognized. No. GSTC recognizes some words on paper. That's what GSTC recognition is. Does the standard or the system, the checklist, conform to our standard? That's it, just the words. We're not looking at how you use them, how you apply them. But it's treated by it. We'll see media reports of this company is certified by the GSTC. No, the words on the standard comply with the GSTC criteria. That's it, no more, no less. But it's tremendously misunderstood. So I really encourage you as professionals, really remember that point. This program is just looking at words on a standard. And most of what you read is probably wrong about it. At this point, because Booking.com and now Google Travel and these giants are using it, we're very concerned. We're now starting to get interest in applicants to get their standard recognized so that their client hotels can get on the booking list. So just days ago, we just put on hold new applications for recognition of standards, and we're going to relook at this because we don't want some entity to just come in, change their standard, not even do anything with it, because we don't have an enforcement mechanism to see if they're creating awards or certification. So until we figure this out, we're just closing it. Because so the great power that we've formed by working with those giant OTAs is a great thing, but it's also inviting, who knows what the intentions are because of that power. It's all changed. We were this little-known technical entity in the past, and now our gains with the OTAs and some of the businesses have changed that. So We're going to be looking at that. And here's an important distinction. We recognized standards and systems. And what's the distinction? A standard is a checklist used to serve as the basis for issuing an award or certification of some sort of mark. That's a standard. We will leave recognition of systems wide open. And what is that? Recognition of systems is basically somebody's internal program. And we just started doing that about 5 years ago. The first to do that was Hilton with their Lightstay program, an internal program to give guidance to their 8,000 hotels, has the GSTC criteria fully embedded in them. So it's to Hilton's interest and our interest and sustainability's interest, if everybody knows that if a Hilton property follows their internal guidance on Lightstay, they're going in the direction of the GSTC criteria. And other businesses have followed suit. So we like that. So a business's internal program can get GSTC recognized, which again, recognized only means the words include the GSTC criteria. It's not about certification. So please, 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 strike from your mind a connection of that program to certification. It's the checklist that might go into certification. It's the checklist that might just go into a training program. Okay, so what's accreditation? Tremendous confusion on the word. Native English speakers get this wrong because they don't work with standards and things on safety and hygiene and all the things that we see eco-labels. Accreditation is a very specific meaning. In fact, the European Union forbids accreditation to occur in the European Union by anybody other than a member state agency. The European Union reserves the word for state government, for national government. Yet, most of us use the word loosely. As professionals, I ask you to stop using the words accreditation and certification loosely. They're very specific technical terms. So what we've done is over the years, we created an accreditation manual where we studied relevant ISO standards, mostly ISO 17065. There will not be an exam. You don't have to memorize that. But the detail is here just to make the point that there's a very systematic, very specific technical thing happening to give this all credibility. Is that, and our accreditation manual is transparent. It's publicly available on our website. You can download and read it. You should. It might put you to sleep, but it's fascinating, and I contradict myself in one breath. But it's a solid system that we spent years in development. And we would even hope that a certification body or awards program that has no intention to get accredited by us at least uses it as good guidance, because we've done all that work of looking at international norms as to what certification is and isn't. And it speaks about auditor qualifications. It speaks about the separation of coaching from certification. We have a big disconnect in the hospitality industry and the tourism industry, because most of the labels that have been in existence do a lot of coaching, which is a fabulous thing. We need coaching, 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 coaching. We need it. We need awareness raising. We need a huge amount of coaching. We need more coaching than we need certification right now. We need more coaching and education than we need certification right now. But they're separate processes. Certification is you go to the judge and jury and say, we've been working so hard for all this time to do all these great things, and we're ready to go to say we're sustainable. You don't get the badge first. You get the badge at the end. So coaching, coaching, coaching. They're separate. And if you read the ISEAL Alliance Assurance Code, and if you read ISO standards, which we've summarized and encapsulated in the GSTC accreditation manual, you see that those are two different things. Certification simply does not include coaching. So, that's ruffled a few feathers, perhaps including in this room, but it's resonating. Again, I come back to governments and big brands with teams of lawyers analyzing risk. They want the most credible system that has been proven in every other sector, and this sector has largely ignored it. So it's a system that's been applied in every other sector. It's a system that works. So, did you like my image on the upper right of the body going into the thing for the MRI? You get the analogy here? It takes a year for us to accredit a certification body. We look at everything. Auditor qualification, auditor selection, auditing process, the certification decision-making committee, conflict of interest internally, impartiality at every turn. It's rigorous, it's intensive, it's personal. So that's what accreditation is. And here, just for your reference, the ISEAL Alliance Assurance Code, just as an example about impartiality. Technical experts employed by assurance providers or oversight bodies are independent of the client. Independent of the client means you didn't coach them to improvement. You don't have a personal relationship with them. You come in as a judge. You can't be their teacher because you become their friend and their judge. That doesn't work. And ISO 17065 says a lot about that. Consultancy services. If you consult for an entity, you cannot be in the auditing process for a minimum of 2 years because you're conflicted otherwise. You know them and like them. So I really, in summary, want you to think about a systematic approach and think about all these things a little bit separately, and then how do we put them all together? Attributes of the criteria. What are the things we're looking at? And we have an existential crisis on climate and plastic, so we have to do better at those yesterday, but we cannot forget the holistic thing. We need to get working on all the attributes. We have to get better at measurement. This is going to be an increasing area of work on our part moving forward to work with other organizations like the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance and Travelist and many others to create universal tools and to look at, in your mind, separate the verification process in a way, but then put them all together. And verification is internal and it's external. I encourage you to do self-assessments of your business. If you're a hotel tour operator, against the GSTC criteria. If you're another form of business, to B Corp, and really take a hard look at yourself and analyze with honesty. And then you turn to external for awards and so forth. And then very quickly in the impacts code, I'm out of time, some of the activities that we do for impacts that we're really focused on, coaching, training, awareness. So we have a training program, very successful. Several people in the room took part. We just did 2 days of training, 2 classes of English, 1 in Spanish. Those people are with us. We have online training all the time in English and Spanish, and we have teams of trainers for private sessions and on-site. Post-COVID, we'll get back into it in many languages. And we can do private sessions, so look at our website to see about our training. So there's tremendous impacts there. The criteria are translated into many languages. All of our technical work is done in English, but we encourage you to download the criteria in many languages to use for training and awareness of your frontline people. Let's push sustainability down through the whole ranks. On the destination side, we have a whole program of activities. We issue a quarterly report, the Destination Stewardship Report, and we publish an annual yearbook that we just released. We have many programs and destinations. We do assessments on destinations and so forth. I want to leave you with these thoughts. I'm out of time, a little bit past, but a big development in our thinking and our interaction with a lot of players is to say, we know it's difficult to be compliant with the full set of the GSTC criteria. It's a big job. Let's take it in stages. So if you as an organization, your business or your government, take it in stages and set some timelines to say, in the next 2 years, we're going to get here. We're going to try to comply with about 1/3 of the GSTC criteria. And then we're going to comply with 2/3 of the criteria. And then we're going to think about levels of verification. We're going to start by doing self-assessments. And then eventually we'll build up more rigorous external verification, right? You don't get the badge first, you get the badge later. Develop, get good, and then look at it. And this strategy, you're going to hear today and tomorrow from 2 national governments that are doing remarkable things along these lines. Tomorrow afternoon, our final plenary, you're going to hear an amazing presentation from Turkey, from Turkey, on a program that we've been working on intensively with them, a quite remarkable program they launched in November 15, pushing all of their hotels in the country to go for full certification to GSTC accredited, a remarkable program. And you're going to hear from our friends. We've been working also deeply with the Singapore Tourism Board. They're doing amazing things to encourage improvement in starting largely with hotels and working with us. Both of them are taking these kinds of systematic approaches to say we can't do it in a day, we have to coach and teach and train and encourage and reward in the promotion and so forth. So I really want you to think about getting to the criteria in stages. This is SDG 12 that I just described, responsible consumption and production. The OTA is putting a mark on more sustainable products. Tomorrow morning, we're going to talk about sustainable supply chains. It is a key piece of our strategy, and we'll come back to this theme tomorrow morning on that. But think about it. In travel and tourism, the consumption is not a tangible product like a coffee bean or a piece of paper. It's buying a hotel. It's renting a car. What kind of bus are we going to lease? Is it electric? Is it clean? That's consumption and production. It's not tangible things, it's products and services. I'm going to skip this now and get into consumer demand tomorrow when we talk about supply chain because I'm over time. And then very quickly, get to know our website. Look, we've got accessibility on it for people with vision and hearing problems. And our content is so rich that we actually have 2 navigation bars, where the main navigation bar, where you see the normal things of about and GSTC criteria and training, has all the content. But then we have portals up on top to sort out this huge amount of content. So if you're a hotel, start here. If you're a destination, start here. So up on top is a portal. So get to know our website, there's a lot there. So thank you for your attention, thank you for being here. Muchas gracias, good luck on your sustainability journey, and looking forward to the 2 days.
Thank you, Randy. And just before we go into a break, while we're all seated, the photographer will come here and take a photo of everyone. Okay, everyone is making sure the hair is fine? Okay. Now we will have a refreshment break until 11:40, and the next session will be held here in the same Auditorium 3 at 11:45. Enjoy the break.